Three, two, one, and we're live. Caleb, how's it going, man?
Pretty good, man. How about you?
Good, good. We were just talking about the crazy snowstorms we're having here in the Midwest. I know Chicago got probably 5-6 inches today. How about you in Indy?
So we got about an inch of rain, and I think we're expecting, well, and then it turned to sleet, and now I think another 9 inches of snow over the next between now and tomorrow night. So it's gonna be a lot. Tough to drive on.
Yeah, I know you spent some time in Texas, and I made a joke this morning on one of my Facebook groups here in Chicago. I was like, this would just cripple Dallas. 5 inches is like
Oh,
hilarious.
a half inch would cripple Dallas, and it does. I've seen it before. So anyway,
Yeah. Do you miss it at all?
yeah. I think just perfectly candid. Had a bunch of friends there. My wife and I went to Baylor and graduated. And half the people from Baylor go to Dallas, the other half go to Houston, and so most of our friends ended up there. So had 11 years with that crew, and then really shallowed me. But I really missed the DFW airport, honestly.
Yeah.
It's direct to pretty much wherever you want to go in the world. So certainly miss a lot about Dallas.
Yeah, for sure, man. Do me a favor and pull your screen down a little bit so I can see your head in the middle. Perfect, cool. Yeah, I missed part of it too. I mean, looking back at it, like I was there a year, and I love kind of the gastronomy culture, just the capitalist like credo is in the blood there. The whole stake your claim on the oil. And it's very much like a red state, a red city. And
for sure.
That's how I look at the world too. I'm someone that likes to take risks. I like to kind of look at things in the entrepreneur mindset.
Yeah.
And I mean, you and I had an awesome dinner a couple weeks ago, and I was really, really impressed by some of the ways that you organize your time, some of the ways you think about your work, specifically like going back to the hedge fund in Dallas. I was hoping that I could maybe ask you a couple questions and you could recant some of those for my listeners. Is that okay?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, this is a podcast about motivation, work styles, work ethic. And, everyone looks at that differently, but you're someone that has a finance background. And, when you were considering things in finance, what made you want to go into a smaller fund? Kind of curious about that.
So I spent most of my early career at Merrill Lynch in their restructuring group. So working out of the bad loans and bad trades the bank had made to very corporate clients. So super bureaucratic, a lot of red tape. But at the same time, like the deals you're working on, like anyone on the street could pick up a newspaper and read about it. So like it's, kind of get some prestige from that perspective. But it really limited kind of like you were saying earlier, the entrepreneurial spirit that I have. And so you'd see an opportunity to put money to work and do well for yourself and your firm. And we couldn't do that because we were a bank. So I knew that I wanted to leave that despite liking the team, and was looking around Dallas, knew that I liked, high yield credit and special situations, that kind of thing. Landed on a smaller shop there that had the size to actually do deals that were meaningful, which is kind of a prerequisite in finance. But was small enough to be very entrepreneurial. And the guy that I worked for was, always looking for an opportunity to do something different. Didn't want to be put in a box, and really, in some ways, is still a mentor to this day. So that was kind of the rationale to lead me to a smaller fund, but big enough that you make a difference. You're not kind of a small fish in a big ocean. Does that make sense?
Yeah. What kind of opportunities do you think you were afforded at a smaller fund versus going to work for Goldman or, somewhere in New York, or even the large ones in Dallas?
I think a big piece of it is that they put a big emphasis on development of junior talent. So, each junior guy like me, who, ranges from ages 25 to kind of early 30s, sits underneath a more senior guy that's been there for a while and has a lot more experience. But the way they do it is they start you off kind of with heavy training wheels. So you're doing a lot of, you're doing the work, they're checking it and confirming that it works. And then, for deals that we pitch, I have to pitch it to him first least when I first started, just so he could hear it and coach me on how to do that.
Mm.
And then it got to the point where we'd do it together, and then eventually it was solely me that was pitching the investment committee on new opportunities that we saw, which you don't get at a bigger firm. Like at B of A, certainly did not get that. My friends at other big shops, like you just don't have it. So they really give you a lot of leash, especially when you're running with a lean team and you're wearing a lot of hats. So it definitely gave me a lot of room to grow, if that makes sense.
Yeah, when you said the training wheels are on, like one of the things you said at dinner was just about, hitting the phone and being like terrified of, what might happen if I say this or don't do this correctly, and almost like psychological tools that you can use to get past that fear. Could you maybe expand on that a little bit or recant that?
So a big piece of what we did was, the way a typical deal would go is Goldman or Citi or B of A would say, we're going to raise a $1 billion term loan for this company, or notes or whatever it is, of debt for this company. They do a big syndication call where you got like 100 guys like me. They're on the phone and taking notes and listening to the company and hearing their business plan. And then afterwards, you schedule kind of, one-on-one calls with management or with the bankers or whatever. And I think the thing I learned was they're just as scared as you are. Because it's probably
Goldman or B of A, like
it's probably they put on a good face because, no offense, but they're salespeople and that's their job. And once you realize that, and once you realize that they don't always know what they're talking about, like it's really helpful just to know that like it's very freeing to be able to ask whatever questions you want, and know that it's probably not going to get back to anybody. It's purely my job here is to get as much information as I need, because I'd rather maybe look silly on this call than look silly in front of my investment committee where senior guys are saying, what the hell, like you don't know what you're talking about, you didn't do the work. So I don't know if that makes sense, but that was probably the biggest thing that I learned.
Yeah, I love that. My first couple sales jobs out of school, I remember just trying to hit the phone and say, like, if I mess up, it's okay, because every time I pick the phone up, it's like a learning experience, and it sounds cheesy, but I think that if I could mirror that in your situation, I'd rather make the mistake now than in front of my investment committee. That's, that really is, those are the people that could demote you or fire you, or, really do matter, right? Or
control what you're paid and everything else. And you see them every day. So we'd certainly rather look stupid in front of the bankers than guys internally.
Yeah, I've sold SaaS for a long time. So software as a service, basically logins to platforms online that allow people to use technology to create some sort of value, right? So a lot of it is conceptual, taking that value and turning it into layman's terms. In that situation, for me, I would have rather sounded dumb in front of maybe a not as important customer that I was going to lose anyway, right? On that first intro call, it's 5 minutes of my life, it's 5 minutes of theirs. Then, on the call with the VP where we have to close them, not be able to talk about it effectively, right? So it's almost like mitigating your risk based on different stages in the cycle. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, that's really similar to what they did too, was where, on a less risky deal, or one that that my boss knew would be like less controversial, like that's where they'd start you, just so that you're able to, it's like you said, it's lower stakes at the beginning. If you mess up, it's not as big of a deal. And then as you kind of grow, they'll step you into those bigger roles over time.
For sure. Were there any things that you did besides just trial and error, trial by fire, to deal with the pressure? How did you eventually get around that nervousness to hit the phone and to be knowledgeable about your products?
To be candid, my biggest sense of nervousness was actually pitching to the committee, because I'd never done that before, where it's, I'm saying, I like this deal, we should do it, and we should commit this much capital to it, and then defend why. And so that was the toughest part for me, just getting over that fear. And I think a lot of it is repetition. I know that sounds ridiculous, but that was the model. Was we did tons and tons of deals, and you get a bunch of reps under your belt, and each one gets a little bit easier. The other thing I do that I know some others did too, and again, it might sound ridiculous, but I don't write a transcript of what I'm going to say, but I've got really good bullet points that lay out exactly what I'm going to say.
Yeah.
You practice it a couple times before, and then you don't deviate.
Mm-hmm.
It gets tricky if it's a really interactive Q&A, but
Mm-hmm.
that really helped at least kind of start the path where I knew how I wanted to do it and how I wanted to develop that way, and then over time it kind of becomes second nature.
Yeah, I mean, you're gonna laugh at me, but even back at like Oaks Academy, right? Like writing an outline for a paper, I think that there's a lot of value in creating a loose structure. And when I say loose, it doesn't mean that the concepts inside the structure are ambiguous, right? You know exactly what you're gonna say at the moment, right? Or generally what that message is, but maybe the filler words in between it, or how you transition as you're writing the paper or you're presenting, that is what can be done on the spot, because it doesn't take quite so much analytical thinking,
Right. Yeah, and I think it's more of, like you said, it's laying out the broad roadmap.
Yep.
Not necessarily like each individual stop, but we have an end goal in sight.
Yeah. I think broad is probably a better word than loose. Like, you want to have a broad framework for what you want to communicate. Sure. And this is all just communication 101. Like, how do you be compelling and get your message across? Because to you it's clear, right? But there's a gap between what you know and what you understand as the truth, and what the client or what your investment team understands. So it's really just about communicating that effectively. And I think you just learn that through repetition, right? Like, I think the best thing any person that's in sales can do in their career is get in a seat like this, where you're just at bat, back to back. How many bats can you get? Because that's where you're really going to learn to hit the home run.
Yeah, and I think being comfortable knowing that you're probably going to strike out, or you may get shot down or whatever, and it's better to do that now in our careers versus when you're 40 or 50. So I'd rather take the heat now, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. Would love to hear more about what you did after that, just kind of a summary, and then transitioning into what you're doing now there in Indianapolis.
Yeah, so I was at that fund for about 3 years. I've got a family here in Indy that has a business that does mostly senior housing and just all-encompassing services for seniors. So that's the backdrop. They've more recently got into investing in earlier stage companies, so SaaS companies. You mentioned that earlier. We'll invest in other people's real estate projects, that kind of thing. We've talked about other investment opportunities, and so I knew that I wanted to work with my family eventually. It was just a question of how and when, and we always joke that my wife and I moved to Dallas in 2014 and said we're going to be here for 2 years, and then it was another 2, and so it ended up being north of 7, and then we kind of realized we probably need to actually get going here. So made that decision back in 2020 that we're going to move back to Indy and start a job with the firm here. So have come back since then, and I want to say we came back in April of last year, and have been working with the team ever since. So I think the challenge has been just learning a different pace of life. So if you think about like just a family business in general, is generally more laid back and slower pace than like Wall Street or enterprise sales or whatever it is. So I think that's certainly been an adjustment, but a good move overall, and I think the right one for the long term.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, actually. I mean, you did the volume, the Wall Street, and now it's taken all that knowledge. And you and I talked about this, like, no one can take that from you. Like, you stood outside your family business, you worked with people that you didn't even know, right? And you were successful in that arena, right? So you should have all the confidence in the world that in a slower paced arena with maybe bigger projects, but less projects, right? You can be successful with those,
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
I was going to say, we talked about like, how do you consider what was a successful day? And how do you consider what was maybe how you could be better the next day? Have you, improved or thought more about that since our meeting about a month ago?
I have not thought a lot about it. It's funny you mentioned that. I literally mentioned that to my wife in the last 2 or 3 days. Just when I was at the fund in Dallas, I knew exactly what was a successful day versus not. It's easily defined. It's very clear. I have specific projects and I know how to do it excellently. Now it's, like we talked about, bigger projects, not quite sure what the scope is. I have a bigger hand in shaping the way it's going to look on the back end. And so I think the way I think about success is, unfortunately, I like knowing if my day was successful or not. I think it's knowing, did I get closer to that goal or not? And it's not going to be measured, successful not be measured in a day, not in a month, but it's going to be over the course of several months, maybe a year, maybe longer, I don't know. But advancing those projects I'm working on that take a lot of time.
Yeah, yeah. A lot of people that I have on this podcast, I ask, of all your priorities, how do you build a to-do list? Or, how do you take maybe the whale project or the 2 big projects and dedicate time to those every day versus the smaller ones that might be super quick and easy, right? And some people say that they put those in the beginning of the day to build momentum. Some people say that they spend, 8 a.m. to noon every day working on the whales. And I'm not really even asking if you have a strategy, but I think that there's something to be said for considering what those big projects are and dedicating time consistently, even if it's not daily to those.
Yeah, so I think, again, you didn't ask the question specifically, but for to-dos for the day, if I have a deal that is external, it's someone, it's a startup that's asking for money and they need it in a couple of weeks. Something like that's a short fuse is absolutely top of the priority list. That is, the only thing I'm working on until it's done in the morning. And then the rest of the time, I try to think in terms of like big blocks of time. Like I don't do well with multitasking. I don't do well with splitting up, 10 hours a day into 100 different projects. I'd rather have a concentrated, few hours to really make progress on something and know that I made progress on something. Versus, jumping back and forth between things. So it's really these longer dated projects. It's, I'll find a window that, I've got 3 or 4 hours and really dedicate to that versus trying to spread myself too thin.
Yeah, I'm the same way, actually. I like to work in spurts where I'm doing 3 or 4 hours of like super solid work. And then, like I'll take a long lunch or I'll watch Netflix, I'll take a nap.
Sure. Yeah.
Because I know I got my work done, it allows me to rest and be like confident in that, like I got my stuff done that day. Right. But one of the things I did when I was in transactional sales was like, did I set 2 meetings today? Right. Every day I'm setting 2 meetings. And if I get to Friday, there's only 9 meetings on that calendar. Right. I'm going to bust my butt that whole Friday to get that second meeting. And when I did that, I was able to kind of say, I did my work for every day this week. And just because it's a sales funnel, it's like, if you can create that many first appointments, so many of those are going to translate into the second.
Statistically. Yeah.
So it's going back.
So use that more in terms of a week than a day.
Yeah. But it's hard to say that one day is great and the next day is not, right. And what does that average out to? 2 successful days if one day is double as successful, right? This is all getting pretty ambiguous right now, but sure. It's a way of taking a sample set of productivity of a small unit and saying over time, how many of these units can I stack up so that my month, my year are successful,
Yeah, for sure. No, I think that makes a lot of sense.
Cool. I definitely want to be respectful of your time. I told you, 40 minutes here. So kind of 5-10 more minutes, just talking about your personal life, other things that you lean on your family for, how do you find mentors? How do you ask your dad or your uncles or your grandpa, for help when you need it?
So that's a hard question. It was easier when I wasn't working for family.
Yeah, sure.
Just because asking for help is, there's less history to the relationship, if that makes sense. So I don't really have a problem necessarily going to family and asking for help. The issue is, I think, balancing the fact that I know that they are the folks that I work for, but also also family. I know that sounds super simple and obvious, but that has been a challenge, I think, is learning how to balance both roles.
Yeah.
So I think, candidly, the transition has been harder than I would have liked it to be. And fortunately, my wife, Christine, has been incredibly supportive and a great sounding board, and giving me the kick in the pants when I need it, to go have those hard conversations, et cetera. So, and then I think the other piece is being in a new city, and it is new. I mean, I was gone for 11, 12 years, somewhere in there. And I think I've never been in that situation as an adult, but it pushes you to know that I need help. I need to have folks in my life that I look up to who can be mentors, and really pushes you out of your comfort zone, which I hate. I'm a creature of habit, and like having everything planned out and not being uncomfortable. But being in that position, I think, certainly pushes you to seek out mentors, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I know that wasn't a question that I prepped you for, but it's interesting because when you say that it might be uncomfortable transitioning into family and saying, how do I ask those people for help? The other side of that token is those investment teams that weren't your family. That was a different kind of maybe like anxiety, right? So you kind of can't have it both ways. You don't have those super pressure filled boiler room situations with your family, but you also have more of a history, and you need to be aware of the whole context of the situation,
Yeah.
And then the second thing I heard is just like how you lean on your wife. And I think whether it's your wife or your friend or someone, what I've found is that, in situations where you're hesitating, you can't see what you can't see about yourself, right? People, when I asked you about how do you get support, to other people, I think sometimes our weaknesses are obvious. It's like, why don't you just ask this person for this?
Yeah.
It's so obvious that there's just one block there that you need to just get across, and all the problems would be solved, right? So really, that point is about perspective. Other people, mentors, leaders, they can see perspective where you can't. And I think that idea of like asking for feedback, or, how would you approach this, is a really important way to get that perspective.
Yeah, and I think one of the other things that, playing on your point of I can't see what I can't see about myself, there have been a couple times in the last 6 months or so where I would bet my life on the fact that I'm right about something, or that my point of view is correct, and it's taken Christine coming alongside me and saying, okay, here, I see the same thing that you do, and challenging that, and it's very painful, and it sucks, and I don't like admitting that I was wrong, but someone just to affirm your point, someone that is not you, that can see the issues, and tell you that you're wrong, or that you just have to change one thing that you're seeing, is excellent from my point of view.
Yeah, I mean, my girlfriend is really, really good at that too. I think it's just empathy. It's saying, you might have a different perspective, but like, I see it your way. Yes, you have a point, you have a great perspective. Have you thought about it this way? And I think the best thing about like loving relationships is the ability to have kind of a safe space to disagree, or to help mold the person as a mirror. That that even if you continue to disagree, there's still love there, and you're able, it's again, like, it's a safe place to disagree mutually, right? And a lot of times in a really healthy relationship, because there's that safe vulnerability base, you're going to make better decisions together, right? So it becomes like a 1 + 1 = 3 kind of situation,
For sure. Yeah, no, that's exactly what we've experienced, at least.
Awesome. I'm so glad you guys are doing well. You got a baby on the way, right?
Yeah. We're due in June, so we've got a puppy that's now 12, 13 weeks old, and she's adorable, but she's an absolute terrorist. So we don't really sleep much at night. I'm not sure what we were thinking doing that right before the baby, but I don't know. Maybe it's good training wheels. Who knows? So
Yeah.
Anyway.
Everyone I get on the podcast, I ask a specific question to.
Yeah.
What are some of the things you're looking forward to about being a dad? Or what are some of the things that you've heard are tough?
Well, we're having a baby girl, and when I heard that, I was like, that's awesome. Like, she's gonna be great, just like her mom. But it scares me to death about like, who's she gonna date? Like, am I gonna approve of the guys that she brings around? Like, what's the right boundaries to set? And so, I mean, sure, I mean, those are problems that are, you know, more than 10 years away. But no, I mean, I think short term, just really looking forward to, you know, just being able to pour all the lessons I've learned out, if that makes sense. Looking forward to seeing Christine as a mom. She's incredibly nurturing, and it's gonna be great.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Yeah, I saw at your wedding just how much you guys love each other and what a strong woman Christine is, and I think you guys are going to be great parents. Sometimes I think about that too. You know, I can't say that I'm thinking 20 years ahead. Who's she going to do in college, right? But I do think about like pouring out those lessons, or really also it's like, what are some things that I had to learn the hard way through trial and error, or through maybe something my parents weren't strong at, right? That I had to just learn, and it was really hard. It was tough, and it was, you know, blood, sweat, tears, that thing that I'll hopefully be able to, you know, instill in my kids in an easier or, you know, more nurturing way. That's one of the things I think about sometimes.
Yeah, and I think the other thing it's certainly at least put on my mind is Christine is one of two girls, and so like, and I really look up to her dad a lot, and so seeing the way that he parents them, which is different than the way that, you know, my dad parented me and my brothers, is certainly a good role model. And also, to your point of the hard lessons, he's really good about letting them learn the hard lessons themselves. Because if someone tells you about it versus you actually experience the consequences of that, you know, assuming that there aren't terrible consequences, but you won't forget that, which to me I think is going to be hard to do, but at least certainly have a good role model for that.
Yeah, maybe I want to walk back that statement too. You know, I want to make it easier for my child. I don't actually want to make it easier. I think it's more like, this is how bad it can get if you don't, you know, take care of this, and almost just like presently warn them, if that makes sense. Like when you and your brothers were on those skateboarding ramps, right? Like you guys had no fear, right? But like I'm sure a couple people broke their ankle or broke their wrist or something, right? Like
well, I mean, I think it's just making sure that they know what the risks are and that they aren't ridiculous, that I'm concerned for their life, but like they make their own choice after that, because otherwise they won't learn.
Totally.
Anyway, so
yeah, cool, man. Really appreciate this quick conversation. I think that your lessons are anyway, would just love to you know, hopefully put it out there and see if we can get some finance bros to bite, and see if there's some value we can share with them.
That'd be great. Well, thanks for having me, and we'll talk again soon.
All right, thanks, Caleb. Talk to you later. Bye. I'll call you too.
Yeah.
Bye.